And welcome back to Lead Yourself First, the Conscious Leadership Blueprint. I'm Dr. Kevin Mays. Today, episode 6, Becoming the Leader That Others Want to Follow. Strategies for Real Influence. Once you develop a strong presence on your conscious leadership pathway, when you begin to develop the mastery over your mind and your patterns of thinking, your patterns of feeling, your patterns of behaving, when you can keep the caveman at bay, when you can interrupt the robot patterns that you established so early on, and you can access your own genius, it's time for contagion. Contagion in this case is contagion of the genius. That is, how do you help others then evoke their own genius? How do you help others get out of their own way? How do you help others interrupt the patterns that are undermining their success? These are leadership strategies that are actually shown to influence how other people's brains are functioning in a given moment. One of the first things that are important to do when trying to bring out the best in others is, first and foremost, have presence and awareness within yourself, to have intention within yourself, to be aligned with your own vision. Remember the 4 steps of the conscious leadership pathway. Then, when you turn your attention back to the outer world in those moments of deep presence and intention, with those moments of deep alignment, then you can behave in a way and engage in a way and create a dynamic that cuts through those caveman tendencies of the persecutor, the victim, or the rescuer, cuts through them in yourself, cuts through them in others, and evokes the best version of others in that moment. And remember, that in fact is your role as a leader. Your role as a leader is not to wield power over people. That's silly and that's dysfunctional. The world has enough dysfunctional authoritarian individuals in place right now. Leadership is really about changing individuals and bringing out the best of individuals so they all align and move forward together. You do that in your organization, you are going to create a world-class organization. And there's really simply, for today's lesson, there's going to be 3 primary strategies we're going to focus on. What I call the connector, the inspector, and the director. Now, each of these are designed to help lead people through problem solving more effectively, through discharging the emotion in the limbic system. It chases away the caveman. So number 1, right here you are, imagine you're in a situation where you're in your best zone. You're calm, you're present, you're aware, and you see somebody else with a heightened emotional state. They're in caveman mode. They're in the persecutor mode, victim or rescuer. Either way, their limbic system's in charge and they are not intentionally moving forward. The first thing you have to do is get them out of that emotional hijack state. Now, recognize influence is not about authority. It's about emotional intelligence and helping others to think clearly. So as you move others out of that reactive state, remember this neural mirroring we talked about. If you're not paying attention and you're unaware, you're going to start to reflect what's going on for them, especially if they're emotionally hijacked, especially if they're frustrated, irritated, if they're downright pissed off. But if you keep your ground and you come into the space with somebody else who is frustrated, you're going to be in a power position. There's one core starting point, and that is this, the connector. When you're in the connector state, you are simply aligning with the other individual. And the reality is, the reason people go into caveman mode is a sense of a broken alignment chain. People are not in alignment. And what's that sound like or look like? They don't feel heard. They don't feel listened to. They don't feel validated. They don't feel important. In short, their success scripts have been invalidated. When an individual is triggered, their ghost comes out. The self-doubt comes out, and that self-doubt is anchored with an uncomfortable emotion, a fear, a guilt, a hurt, a shame. And that uncomfortable emotion is coded with a secondary emotion, which is often anger, frustration, or some form of rage that comes out forward that looks like the caveman. underneath it all is a more vulnerable human being. The most impactful thing you can do in this connector state is a demonstration of empathy. So, role one, step into connector. What is connector? It's a demonstration of empathy. What does that look like? It simply looks like mirroring back, being a mirror to the other individual. And I'm not talking about running around in the tirade if they're in a tirade. No, mirroring back is simply mirroring back what you hear them say. What I hear you saying is, hold on. If I hear you correctly, you're saying, I've seen it done so well where people say, hold on, let me write this down. What it's doing is demonstrating your interest in hearing them. That's very different than our natural tendency, which might be to fall into rescuer mode to fix the problem. Your job is not to fix the problem as a leader. Your job is not to be the hero. Your job is not to be the one with the answers. Your job is simply to help eradicate the limbic hijack, taking them over. And that's done through simply mirroring back. It's through what I call matching and mirroring and reflecting back. What I hear you saying is, so if I hear you right, and what that does is it positions you differently. Instead of head to head, where they come in frustrated and you start to give them solutions. So now they have something more to hit against. Remember, when their caveman is in charge, they don't have logic available to them. Your job is not to bring the logic. The logic will only give them something to resist against at a higher level. And think about it. When you've been frustrated and irritated, it's because you haven't felt understood. You haven't felt heard. And when somebody does, when somebody simply repeats back what you're saying, it's like this bubble burst. Yes, finally, somebody gets it. Finally, somebody understands. But when we feel alone and isolated, it activates the limbic hijack. It activates that persecutor, the triggeredness that comes out in us. And when that happens in somebody else, your job is simply to reflect back. What I hear you saying is to align in a way that, and you allow them to vent and you validate them. You're not validating them that they're factually correct. In fact, they might be saying the most ludicrous thing you've ever said. Yes, what I hear you saying is the moon is made out of cheese. And they'll say, no, that's not it. By simply reflecting back, you're going to help cut through the insanity of the moment when their caveman is in charge. This works. Try it. When you see somebody who's frustrated, whether it's a colleague, your manager, your direct report, your spouse at home, don't fix the problem. Simply reflect back. Boy, that sounds horrible. And when they say the thing, oh, so what I heard you say was on the way back, on the way home from work today, people were driving really slow or whatever the thing is, just repeat it back. Now, you repeat back the words they say, and it's a demonstration of alignment because it's a lack of alignment that evokes the caveman, right? It's a social dynamic at play. Now, one next deeper step is to be able to demonstrate that alignment in that connector phase, demonstrate that alignment physically. Watch. When you start to match and mirror their posture, they've done research where they've watched individual couples on dates and they can tell the direction the date is going by watching the posture. When their posture begins to mirror each other, there's a deeper alignment that shows that individuals feel safe with each other. They feel open with each other. They start to feel vulnerable with each other. One way match and mirroring plays out physically. Think about yawning. One person yawns. Yawns are contagious. Historically, in our native tribe, right, it was an indicator that we're safe, that we're in a comfort zone, that we're here together. However, notice the posture of an individual when they come in and they're in that caveman mode, they're going to have a heightened state. And your job is to evoke calm state within them to help them pull the plug on that limbic system. Reflect back. What I hear you saying is this is not questioning at all. That's a different skill set. Open-ended, solution-focused questions are very different than simply reflecting back. What I hear you saying is, and it's nodding, it's eye contact, it's reflecting back, and then as they start to de-escalate, it's beginning to match and mirror their physical posture. Notice what an impact that has and what power it gives you in helping to manage the dynamic in a way that helps them be better off. And know this, You're not changing them. You're changing you, the way you show up. But when you show up with that kind of intention and alignment with your vision and your commitment to make them better by not reacting, just listening, no matter how ludicrous what they're saying is, just listen and reflect back. That active listening absolutely de-escalates and pulls the plug on their limbic system. You'll see their affect start to change. And you, again, I go back to your own experience. You know, when somebody reflects back to you, when you feel completely irritated, when you feel, and what's underneath it, when you're triggered, you feel isolated, misunderstood, unheard, unvalued. When somebody simply reflects back what they're hearing you say, that connection happens. It busts the bubble, the affect shifts. That's when you shift your strategy, but not a moment before. First strategy, simply reflecting back through the connector. Now, after they start to shift, after you notice that their affect starts to change, right? They're less heightened, they're calmed down. Their brain, you've actually shifted their brain in that moment. And that's the magic. What you're doing is changing the brain chemistry that's active in them in the moment. You're shutting down, helping them shut down that cortisol blast where they feel like the persecutor, the victim, the rescuer, what have you. You're starting to shut down that cortisol blast. When that starts to filter itself out, you're going to see their affect shift. They're going to start to have access to the genius brain. Once that happens, you shift out of connector into inspector. Now, what are you doing in inspector? The key role of the inspector is simply inspecting. How do you inspect? By asking open-ended, solution-focused questions. What's it mean to be open-ended? These open-ended questions cannot be answered with a yes or no. They have to be asked and answered in a way that requires a higher level of thinking. So this is really a tough one because we're so used to just throwing questions out. And watch, when you ask questions, to really pay attention, not asking questions like, do you think you could do it differently? That's a yes or no. As opposed to, what do you think you could do differently? Now, number one, they're open-ended. So it requires critical and creative thinking. It requires access to the prefrontal cortex, the executive brain, the genius brain. This is what you're doing by simply inspecting, by asking these open-ended solution-focused questions. You're inviting them to enter into that genius brain mentality. Now, the first part is open-ended. The second part is solution-focused. Why solution-focused? Isn't it important for them to understand the problem? Here's the thing to understand. The problem is what's triggering them. And it's like when I go skiing, right? You don't want to look at the direction that you don't want to go. I'm a snowboarder. I love to snowboard through the trees. If I pay attention to the trees, what I've learned through the school of hard knocks is that if you pay attention to the trees, that's where you go. If you pay attention to the result you want and where you're going, that's where you go. So focusing on the solution with open-ended questions is key. What's that look like? What do you suppose the first step on the pathway is? What's the next thing we should try? And recognize, now sometimes what I found, people will get overwhelmed when the question's too big. Breaking it down into bite-sized pieces. That's why I'll ask, what's the first step on the solution? What's the first step towards resolving this? In the best case scenario, what do you think needs to happen right now? What would be the first thing? What would the impact of that be? How would we know it was effective? Those open-ended solution-focused questions are absolutely essential, because what we're doing here is not providing the answer. And this is the key. That's really an important element in your growth from a performer to a leader to a true executive, is that your job is not to be the brilliant one who has all the answers. That will undermine you every time. It'll create codependency in your organization. I've seen organizations where the leader becomes the bottleneck because they have the expertise that everybody goes back to them when they have a problem. It's giving people fish, not teaching them to fish. The old saying, your job as a true leader, as a true executive, is to help individuals learn to fish. What's that mean? To learn to think at a higher level when they have a problem, and to help them rest assured that when they come to you and they're frustrated, You're there for them. You're going to help them see it, talk them down, help them become better in that moment, and then help them find the solution. You're going to train them to elevate their leadership, to elevate their ability to perform in difficult situations, not to give them the answer, not to fix it, not to solve the problem. That's not your job. On occasion, you might need to, sure. But if you're doing that consistently, you're undermining your ability to elevate the team. Now, what you want to do then is ask those open-ended solution-focused questions in a way that help them create clarity of the solution in a way that they can buy into it. You think about it, what are they more likely to buy into? Even if you have a brilliant solution to the problem, whose solution are you going to buy into? Are you going to buy into somebody else's solution that may be brilliant, or your own solution that you have ownership in? 100% of the time, you're more likely to buy into a solution that you came up with. That's why asking these effective questions is so profound and powerful, because they're going to buy into it. In fact, what I've noticed, that the most brilliant solution to any problem, it's worthless if nobody buys into it. Your job isn't to have the brilliance. Your job is to create buy-in in a way that's aligned with the vision of the organization. In fact, I've seen the best solution to a problem be detrimental because people resist it. Why would somebody resist these awesome solutions? Because it's yours and not theirs. Your job is to elevate the engagement across the organization. And remember, the Gallup survey says 30% of people are actually doing the heavy lifting. And if you're like the average organization out there, 30% of the people are the go-to folks. Your job then is to help move that needle. And you help moving that needle by creating an environment where people bring their genius, where they learn to solve problems, where they learn to bring themselves down, solve the problem. And then the key is, once they have clarity of the path forward in a way that they can take ownership and accountability of, then the job is for you to follow up with that accountability. This is when we move to the next strategy, right? So first we have the connector, that is creating empathy and connecting. Then we have the inspector. Lastly, we're going to have the director, and the director is about giving clear, concise feedback and holding people accountable to what they agreed to and what they know. There's a clear expectation around what they said they're going to do. Your job as a leader, more than ever, is about creating that level of accountability, making sure the accountability is aligned with the vision of the organization and what you're trying to achieve with the goals. So when you think about it at a core level, your job as a true executive, a true leader, a conscious leader, is away from understanding problems and getting stuff done, more towards elevating humans towards a vision. And they have to understand that vision. Now, I want to back up a little bit and say one thing. What happens when you start to ask the open-ended solution-focused questions? When you're in inspector mode, asking the open-ended questions, and they start to get frustrated. I don't know the answer. That's why I'm coming to you. Recognize they're back in caveman mode. That's when you need to go back to the other strategy. So this is not a linear process. It's about understanding these three core competencies and being able to bounce back and forth. To isolate, I'm going to encourage you to isolate the practice of asking open-ended solution-focused questions. Isolate your ability to just bear witness, to be there and reflect back what I hear you saying is, and to match and mirror their posture, to identify their emotional state. Be able to isolate those skill sets and bounce back and forth between the two as needed. When the emotion comes up, the first thing you must do is de-escalate. Once they're de-escalated, what you must do is help them open the door to that genius brain. Once they've got a plan in place, then the job is asking questions with enough clarity that get them to identify that what they're going to do, when they're going to do it, how they're going to follow up with you, how they're going to know they're successful, and what the impact is going to be. This way, there's no question about it. Wednesday, when do you think you can have this done? What do you think our follow-up needs to look like? This is when you must repeat it back to make sure it's clear. Okay, so Wednesday at 3, you're going to check in with me. Do we need to create a scheduled item on the agenda to make sure that follow-up's happening? Let's do that. Will you please send me an invite for a 3 o'clock meeting Wednesday so we can talk about how this is going forward and what support you need, what's working and what's not working. I'm here to support you. Ultimately, ultimately, you are there to support them. You can't make anybody do their job, but you can hold them to what they say they're going to do. Now, what happens Wednesday at 3 when you get back together and they had made a commitment to the thing they were going to do because they entered into your space with a problem, right? And they're frustrated about it. You talk them down, you help them clarify the path forward. Now you're holding them to the path. Wednesday at 3, you have a written document of all the things they said they were going to do. How'd you do? This is where you create accountability and follow through. And what you're actually doing now is taking this new behavior that they've established and this new problem solving ability that they've established when they were in that genius brain and they came up with a solution. Now, what you want to do is automate this new behavior into robot brain, much in the same way when you drove a car. It took a long time of focused attention. And if you didn't practice, you would never learn. You had to practice over and over again until it became a new automatic behavior that you never thought about. That's when robot brain took over. There's a real benefit to robot brain. However, sometimes if we're not aware when robot brain's in charge, we'll keep doing things that undermine us. Now, the same thing is true here, that we want to ingrain a new behavior that becomes automatic. It's like when I'm playing guitar and I practice a new chord pattern over and over. After 3 weeks, I can do it without thinking about it. And it becomes a muscle memory. I do it without even having to pay attention to what my fingers are doing. They automatically do it. This is what we're trying to create when you are in that director mode. The director mode is really an activator. The director mode is the activator, activating the actual behavior over time to make sure they're following through. You're creating accountability, and it's not personal. This is the great thing. If you've done it when you're in the inspector mode, right? You're asking questions about what, when, and how, or the who, what, when, as they say, who is going to do what by when. Okay. And then you follow up with that. No, it's not personal. You're just following through with what you said you were going to do. And if you don't follow through, then you're demonstrating that we don't follow through in this organization. Your job as a leader is to absolutely follow through, to provide feedback. Here's what you said you were going to do, and here's what actually happened. And the two don't match. What happens if they don't do what they said? Let me tell you a little story. I worked with an individual one time. I ran an organization, and this individual was not following the policies and procedures in a way that would be easy to brush off, but it was creating dissent among the customers and among the staff. Not okay, even though in his mind it was a minor thing. Often the reason people don't follow policies and procedures is what? The number one reason, they're not clear of what they are. Number one is let's create a clear expectation that we can align with. Back to aligning. So we aligned. Here's the clarity. I sat down with him and said, hey, I want to make sure you understand what the expectation is. And as soon as I laid it on the table, what happened? He went into caveman mode. How do I know? He started to blame, make excuses, and become defensive. What did I do? I could, as his authority, I could have said, no, here's what you're going to do. Rest assured, sometimes there's times to do that, but often you win the battle and not the war. Instead, I just repeated back, oh, what I hear you saying is, and I kept repeating it back until he felt validated. In that bubble burst, he wasn't reactive anymore. He calmed down. Okay, you have clarity of what the expectation is, right? We've talked about it. I want to make sure there's alignment, and I'm here for you. What are you going to commit to do to make sure you're following the policies and procedures and you're adhering to them in a way that works for everybody? He started talking. I started writing. Said, when are you going to have that done by? What's the impact going to be? When can we follow up? And lo and behold, we had it very clearly. It was a Thursday at 3:00. Brilliant. Thursday at 3:00 in our one-on-one. We're going to talk about this. And what are you going to tell me? You're going to tell me you're doing a great job. Fantastic. I look forward to it. What happened? Thursday at 3:00, he comes in right away. He's got excuses. He's the victim. What role do I fall into? Oh, it's okay. Don't worry about it. We'll do it better next time. No, that's the rescuer. Or do I get mad as nails because it's insubordination? That's the persecutor. Neither of those. It's all simply written down. I've got a sheet of paper. Here's what you said last. Here's our discussion last time. And we clearly spelled out, here's what you're going to do. And I had written down then my observations of the behavior and said, look at this. The behavior doesn't match the expectations. You didn't follow through with what you said you were going to do. And right away, again, he got escalated into caveman mode. I just reflected back what he was saying. He calmed down. I said, my job is not to make you do anything. My job is to help the organization be successful. And in order to do that, I'm the keeper. I'm the keeper of the values. I am the one who makes sure the policies and procedures are followed. So what needs to happen moving forward? What are you going to commit to do? And guess what? I'm writing this down. Now I have another sheet, and he writes down exactly, he tells me what he's going to do, when he's going to do it. And we write the whole thing down. Guess what? A week goes by, and now we have another scheduled meeting, and he hasn't followed it yet again. Now, it would be easy in my head to feel like it was insubordination. It'd be easy to get frustrated, irritated, to take it personally. He's not listening to me. It's a disrespect, to get pissed off. It's his decision. This has nothing to do with me. It has everything to do with his decision. My job is to help him be better. That's his choice. But at this point, I know, because we had gone through this multiple times and I had multiple sheets of paper, I know this is simply not a fit. He has made the decision that this is not working through his behavior. And I had to fire him. Now, I felt miserable about this. I had never fired anybody in my life. So I brought the CEO in. I remember the CEO sat in the corner. And I'm at a round table with this guy, me and him, and I laid out all the sheets of paper with this guy. I'll call him Don, because that was his name. And here's me and Don. And I laid out all the sheets of paper and said, Don, let's walk back through this path. We had this conversation and clarified the expectation. And you had suggested, you committed to doing these things, but you didn't. And then you made another commitment to doing stuff, and it didn't happen. And I asked you if you needed any support, and we went one more time. And here we are. Your behavior is not matching the expectations. And it's not my job to make anybody do anything. It's your choice. I'm providing the support. But it looks to me like you've made the decision that this is simply not working and you don't want to be here. I just sat there dumbfounded. Like, I guess you've made the decision. And in that moment, I watched the CEO in the corner sit up straight, and I watched Don across the table in front of him say, I guess you're right. I'll pack my stuff and go. He didn't go into caveman mode. He didn't cry. He didn't complain. He didn't become the victim. No, I helped coach him into a position where this was clearly not working. He clearly had resistance. We called it out. I did all the skills that I knew how to do. But this is the funny thing. He got up, walked out, said, I'll go pack my stuff. And the executive director, the CEO in the corner, when he left, he said, how on earth did you do that? You know what I said? I have no idea, because I didn't know. But it wasn't until years later, when I really started to understand how the brain works and how the brain functions, that I started to see there's an art to this, but there's some basic skills that as a leader, if you can utilize the skill set, what is it? It's basic stuff: connecting, inspecting, directing, right? Creating this environment where you're witness, you're there with them. You're not trying to fix them. You're not telling them what to do. You're not making them do anything, just letting them be in the state they're in until they de-escalate. And then opening the door, inviting their genius brain until they clarify the path forward that they're connected and they're committed to. And then holding them accountable to that path. And when they make the decision, either it's on them, it's not on you as a leader. You don't have to fire people. This is what I discovered. People will do it for themselves. If it's not a fit, if they're truly aligned and you are clarifying the vision and you are helping them eliminate the roadblocks within themselves to them pursuing the vision, then you're on fire as a leader if you're doing that right. And if you're not doing that, you're fired as a leader, right? Because your job is not to get stuff done. And your job is not to make people do anything. And your job is not to be down in the weeds. Your job is to be a visionary that elevates and brings out the best in people. And through these basic 3 skills, it simply comes down to this: ask, listen, and tell. Or listen, ask, tell. That specific, that easy. Connector, inspector, director. When you do that, when you practice it again and again, and you get better and better at that, you're going to watch, you're going to elevate your team in a way you never knew was possible. You're going to bring out the best, the genius brain in each of your team members, and they're going to start to hold each other accountable. That's the real end result, because now you're laying the cornerstone of a high performance culture, A culture where people hold themselves accountable, a culture where people witness to each other, where they help each other get out of their own way, and then unleash the genius within in a way that they stay accountable. They create consistency, they create systems, they create patterns, they create excellence. The path to excellence starts with you. To be a true conscious leader, to start with presence and awareness, to start with an intention and vision, this is the pathway. This is just the cornerstone of the book we've launched, Lead Yourself First. To learn more about how to lead yourself first, a book filled with tactics and ideas that start at a deep core level with how you lead yourself. Before you can lead others, you must learn to lead yourself first. To create new patterns of thinking, of feeling, and behaving that go beyond what you programmed in your own neurocircuitry in the first 3, 5, 7, 10 years of your life. You see, what got you here will not get you there. So check it out. Lead yourself first. Go to upgradeyourleadership.com. We have resources available for you to lead at the highest level possible. Check out the book, upgradeyourleadership.com, to find Lead Yourself First and become the kind of uncommon conscious leader that others follow, esteem, and respect. Become the brilliant leader that's possible by leading yourself first. Go to upgradeyourleadership.com and light that fire of leadership within. So please subscribe and become part of the community of leaders who are committed to being better, to being exceptional, to being brilliant. Here's to your brilliance. Lead yourself first. Go to upgradeyourleadership.com. Join the movement. For now, this is Dr. Kevin, wishing you well.